Welcome back to Let's Talk Herps. I'm your host, Stephen Lewis. A lot has been said recently about animal welfare, and frankly, I'm for it, right? However, if you don't know what USARK is, it's a lobbyist organization that works on behalf of animal keepers to make sure that legislation that impacts our hobby and our industries is done so in accordance with our rights. Simply put, they fight for us to keep reptiles. There has been a call for them to step in with animal welfare standards. This should stop. Please stop. That is not what they do. And frankly, I'm not sure that's what their role should be. Instead, we've long discussed as a community the need for self-policing, for us to call out bad actors and support responsible and ethical breeders in our community. But what does that entail? I'm very happy to announce we have a very special guest joining us. Please welcome Officer Lewis Stevens of the Reptile Hobby Self-Policing Unit.
Thank you for having me, Stephen. It's great to be here.
Well, it's certainly a unique situation, having you here.
What do you mean?
Because you're, because we're, let's dive right in. Tell me, how do you think the reptile industry and hobby can regulate itself without any kind of government or law enforcement intervention?
That's a fantastic question, Stephen. As an officer of the Reptile Community Self-Policing Task Force, I believe it's crucial for us to take responsibility for regulating our own community. By educating ourselves and others about proper care, responsible breeding, and ethical practices, we can create a culture of self-regulation. It's about fostering a community that values animal welfare and holds each other accountable.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying we should be the change we want to see in the reptile hobby.
That's it, exactly. Have accountability for your own actions, prioritize the well-being of your reptiles, and you don't need to go any further than that. Thanks for having me on.
Now, hold on, don't leave, Lewis, okay? What about those individuals who engage in animal abuse or unethical practices? Okay, how do we handle them without government intervention?
Oh, okay. Yes, the infamous troublemakers within our hobby. We at the Self-Policing Task Force recommend establishing independent organizations or platforms that investigate and expose those who mistreat animals or engage in unethical practices.
Hold on. Are you fake smoking?
I'm illustrating a point, dude. It's an analogy.
Is this guy serious?
Smoking may make you look cool as hell, but I don't know if you know this, it actually causes cancer, okay? Some of these big name flashy breeders are really toxic for our still young and growing hobby. By bringing attention to these issues and sharing info, we can discourage such behavior and protect the animals. It's all about shining a light in the darker corners of our hobby.
Okay, that's a really big reach with that analogy. What sort of independent organizations are you talking about, like PETA?
No. These organizations already exist in Europe and in the UK and around the world. We already have local herpetological societies throughout the United States as well. And that is the sort of organization that needs to be modeling actions of existing organizations like the British Herpetological Society, which is not just a club, but an organization that supports research, publishes a highly regarded scientific journal, creates guidelines based on current modern understandings of natural history and biology and welfare. And it helps disseminate that information and makes recommendations for the hobby to follow. It's one of the reasons reptile keeping in the UK is way ahead of the United States with regard to welfare.
What'd you just say about our country, dude?
Nothing personal, man, but I'm in law enforcement. I don't get caught up in loyalty. I can only call it like I see it.
We could agree to disagree, I guess, but let's shift gears, okay? Let's talk about customer service. A lot is talked about misrepresentation of animals, basically fraud, whether it's morphology, lineage, growth potential. Not only that, there's a high risk of being scammed, okay, when you're dealing with folks online and not face to face. And it seems that there's little in the way of accountability. How can we address these concerns within the industry?
Well, that's an excellent point, Stephen. Customer service is a vital aspect of any industry, including the reptile hobby. What we in the Self-Police division hope to do is to establish a feedback system where buyers can rate their experiences with sellers. By encouraging transparency and accountability, we empower customers to make informed decisions and motivate sellers to provide better service. It's like creating a community-driven Yelp for reptile keepers.
So now you're the Self-Police division. A moment ago, it was the task force.
The community recognizes how important the task force was, and we upgraded. Keep up, the shit moved quick.
I love the idea of a reptilian Yelp, but isn't that just basically what Morph Market is doing?
Yeah, Morph Market is a great example of an organization that drives customer service interactions, but a lot of reptile transactions occur off of Morph Market in our direct sales. This is when they call on me to self-police. There are buyer and seller feedback groups on social media sites like Facebook that I highly recommend people search through before contacting a breeder. But otherwise, they should just be smart about who they buy from. I saw your video on how not to get scammed, but even legitimate sellers rip people off. So make sure you're dealing with someone who is accountable.
I see you're smoking again. Is this another metaphor or allegory or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Now I want to go back and focus on animal welfare again. If we could, simply put, how can we ensure that reptiles are treated ethically and receive the care they deserve within a well-policed hobby?
Animal welfare should always be a top priority for us as reptile enthusiasts. By promoting education and responsible pet ownership, we can emphasize the importance of providing proper care for reptiles. Okay? Sharing information on proper husbandry techniques, encouraging best practices, and supporting ethical breeders can all contribute to ensuring the well-being of our scaly friends. Listen, I saw Dave Calling tell you that he wanted to be the breeder he would buy from. I will say something like that. Support breeders who keep reptiles the way you think they should be kept. Hold them to the same standards you set for yourself. As a community, we used to say things like, if a snake is breeding, then it's healthy and must be kept well, or a stressed out snake won't reproduce. But we know that's bullshit now.
People still say that.
Yeah, and some of these dumb motherfuckers still smoke cigarettes too. Just knowing something is wrong isn't enough. You have to act. You have to change.
Well said, officer. I think that brings me perfectly back to social media. How do we navigate hostile people on these platforms and while still promoting a positive image for the reptile hobby?
Listen, social media itself is a virtual realm of passionate debates and clashes. When encountering hostility, it's important to approach the situation with patience and respect, engage in civil discourse, provide evidence-based info, and foster understanding. Remember, it's not about winning arguments, but about promoting education and mutual respect. If the goal is to be informative, then it's best to try and leave emotion out of the equation. And when things do get heated, it's okay to step back and disengage. Not every battle is worth fighting. Also, I mean, look around you right now. Those cages behind you are real. The snakes in there are real. The people paying those electric bills, cleaning the poop, getting bit, they're real. Okay, social media, while being a real conversation, has absolutely no impact on those snakes behind you. Nothing I say or do to you will make their lives any better if you don't act. One person who could help or harm those snakes is you. Focus on your world, your practices, your priorities, and always let that be your touchstone for where you stand.
Wise advice, officer. Now, if you would, I'd like you to imagine a world without self-policing. Paint us a picture of what the reptile hobby would look like and how it would impact hobbyists and maybe even the animals themselves.
Oh, the horror, right? In a world without self-policing, the reptile hobby would be a chaotic and lawless place. Animal abuse and unethical practices would run rampant, and the welfare of these animals would suffer greatly. Without self-regulation, the hobby would lose its integrity, and the passion we have for reptiles would be overshadowed by the darker aspects. Self-policing ensures that we have a thriving and responsible community dedicated to the well-being of these incredible creatures.
Yeah, I see.
Not only that, it opens up the hobby to outside regulation. Time and time again, we see that when local, state, and federal government becomes involved with legislation designed to protect either the animals or the population, they do so without even a fraction of the information and knowledge that some of the most basic keepers have. Except they have the power to confiscate and euthanize our animals and the ability to prosecute us as reptile keepers. Unfortunately, whenever there's a profit to be made selling animals, bad actors will always be involved to exploit the animals. If they remain unchecked, it's a guarantee that the government will step in and over-legislate. That could be devastating to the reptile industry and hobby.
Are you saying to keep your brothers in law enforcement completely out of this?
Maybe. Maybe not. Right? Animal abuse deserves prosecution. I don't have the authority to put anyone inside a real prison. Yet. And some legislation really makes sense when it stems from conservation interests and animal welfare or public safety. A number of states have well-coded permit regulations for venomous animals and large constrictors. Bag limits on reptile harvesting in the wild are, those are important for the hobbyists as they are for the big game hunter, right? So there's room for government intervention. What I am preaching against is a community that fails to protect its own. And by its own, I mean the animals. I don't mean massive breeding operation with blowhard owners who value their ego and profits over the welfare of the animals. I'm preaching against the community that sells monitor lizards and giant snakes to people who can't afford their care, and 3 years down the road, they either kill the animal or let it loose in a public park. I'm talking about a world where the only news that is public about reptiles is about abuse or abandoned pets or injuries. That is the kind of scenario that results in widespread bans and draconian measures that keep reptiles out of homes altogether. The average person has an unnatural fear of reptiles already. It's instilled in them through mainstream media and social interaction. Letting that run unchecked without self-regulation, without the self-police, it's a death sentence for what we call a hobby.
It's truly a chilling scenario, Officer Stevens. Thank you for sharing that glimpse into a world without self-policing. It's clear that what you do is vital for maintaining the integrity of the reptile hobby and ensuring the welfare of the animals involved.
Thank you, Stephen. I encourage all reptile enthusiasts to embrace self-regulation. By educating ourselves, promoting responsible practices, and holding each other accountable, we can create a thriving and ethical community together. We can make a positive impact and ensure the well-being of our scaly friends, man.
Oh my God, do you have another analogy?
No, man. Why do you keep asking that? Do people pay you for this?
No, God, no. I do this in my own time, but you're making me question that. Thanks. I do have some wonderful patrons, though. And they're the ones that help keep this channel alive, so that could then bring on experts like yourself. I definitely want to thank them for their continued support. And thank you so much for your time, Officer Stevens. Do you have any parting words?
Just stay passionate, stay informed, and let's continue to be the guardians of the reptile hobby. And if you think I'm a joke, that's okay. But when you stop laughing, I hope that you take a minute to consider what would happen if I don't exist. Because for the most part, I'm all you fucking got.
Well said, Lewis. And to our viewers, remember, it's up to each and every one of us to uphold the highest standards of care and ethics in the reptile hobby. Thank you for watching Let's Talk Herps. I hope you enjoyed learning something. Well, that brings us to the end of the interview. I want to thank Officer Stevens of the Self-Police for joining us today and sharing these valuable insights. Any final thoughts or words of encouragement for our viewers?